Welcome to ACC Nation. That's Will Ojanen. I'm Jim Quist, and we're talking sports. Got lots of sports news, lots of sports talk. We're going to take a look at what's going on with the football in the conference. Also, we're going to take a look at basketball. And we're going to start with basketball tonight because the preseason men's AP Top 25 came out today. And so let's take a quick gander at that. The top 5 teams are as follows. Kansas is number 1. Duke is number 2. Purdue, 3. Michigan State, 4. And Marquette at number 5. Also in the top 25, it's Miami at 13, which is not surprising. And at number 19, it's UNC. Here's a little bit of a surprise in that the only other team that showed up in the polling is in the receiving votes category, and that's at number 31, UVA. Now, I think a lot of that has to do with people getting an idea now that there's a lot more going on at Virginia than they thought was going to be going on. So that's probably why they've got them lined up to make that immediate jump into the top 25 when the time comes. Your thoughts on that top 25?
Yeah, no surprise at all that Kansas is preseason number 1. I feel like with what they've added, especially getting Hunter Dickinson to come there, I think that's going to really be a big boost for them. I don't know. I kind of expected Purdue to be number 2 just because, Zach Edey, he's going to be, among the best players in the country again this season. It's just a matter of whether or not anybody else around him actually steps up. Duke being that high, no shocker. Running it back with, the guard there. You have a great guard play. Just a matter of how much that of that next step all these incoming freshmen can take. Michigan State, again, Tom Izzo's finally reloading. It's taken a couple years. I mean, they've always been really good. They just haven't been quite to this level yet. Mm-hmm. Marquette at number 5. I think it's just a testament to what Shaka Smart's built there in such a short time. I mean, they don't have they're not the most talented team in the world, but they experience. They have, obviously, Shaka's a really good coach. Texas aside, that wasn't on him. He's just a really good coach. I think he's got a really good team around him. Just outside of that, FAU at number 10, I think that says a lot to what people think about them. After getting that run to the Final Four, obviously they pretty much bring everybody of consequence back. So I'm really excited to see how they adapt to that. And plus, they're in a new conference this year in the American. They're still the favorite to win that. Miami, I still need some convincing. Yeah. Like, they certainly have some pretty good players, but I just don't think we can overstate the loss of Isaiah Wong and how much he meant to that team over the years. So I guess I'm just going to need to see somebody else, take that, a huge step forward. And a lot of people, there are people on that roster that can, but I need to see it. I'm a little surprised. Kentucky at 16. I think I'm actually, obviously they continue to recruit, but I just don't feel like they as a team, they're just not what they've been. And I'm curious to see what they are this year. Carolina at 19, I think, again, need to see it. I ask, what have we seen from Hubert Davis? Yeah, we usually think he's a good coach. I know Baycott's back for his 12th year. But I mean, maybe Caleb Love is an addition by subtraction. We'll see. And then obviously Virginia getting in the receiving votes category isn't a huge surprise. I think some of that is just because it's Tony Bennett, and some of that is, there's still a lot of question marks on this roster. They're bringing in a lot of new pieces, and we know there's some it can be complicated complicated to learn the pack line. And sometimes we see that, seem new additions take a while to adapt to it. I think, and one of the things with me is, can they be a consistent 3-point shooting team? I know Isaac McNeely can stroke it. Who else on that team? Does Reese Beekman, now that everything's in his hands, maybe takes that next step forward? Do they get the roadie kid who transferred from St. Thomas up the road for me? Does what he did in the Summit League kind of carry over to the ACC? What about the front court? There's a lot of questions in the front court. I don't doubt Tony Bennett will get it all figured out, but just to what level?
So, a couple of quick questions for you, based upon some comments that you made. Shaka Smart, with Marquette at number 5, he has received a lot of praise, but an awful lot of dissing about his coaching ability and whether or not he's really all that. And you bring up the fact that, okay, being at Texas probably didn't help him one bit in that department, and moving over to a program that's got some kind of idea of how to actually apparently run a basketball program does. But what are your, just judge, where do you put Shaka Smart as coach?
Overall, he's probably, I don't know, I don't think he's top 5, but maybe top 10 as a 10 to 15 as a coach overall. I think it's possible that, and there's nothing wrong with this. There are certain people, and this is true for athletes, they're best when they're not, when the lights aren't the brightest. Maybe he wasn't good in the bright lights at Texas, where everything is scrutinized, and a place like Marquette is a perfect fit for him. It's there are athletes who, we see them go to New York, play for the Yankees, they struggle because of the pressure. They go elsewhere, do great. Yeah. That's certainly a something that could be in play here.
Long list of people who fit that category, coaching and playing wise. Miami and UNC, I think the points you make there in regard to show me, as we always say here, I think definitely applies. There is some question there. You've lost Wong, but who steps up? And then you go to UNC, and if UNC doesn't deliver this year, are we at the point where we have to say that Herbert is maybe not the guy? Maybe he's not as good a coach as we hoped that he would be.
Certainly possible. I mean, you're relying on, RJ Davis, I think, could be the kind of guy who could take a bit, a step forward this year if he is able to, be the guy. He could be, like I said, maybe Caleb Love's addition by subtraction, him and Baycott, getting more of the, that's 30 points a game those two averaged last year. And then there's also the integration part, getting Cormac Ryan from Notre Dame, and you got Harrison Ingram, who came in from Stanford. They loaded up on transfers in the portal, plus got a couple of 5-stars. Elliot Cadeau could be somebody that could be playing a lot of minutes right away. So I think this is an interesting roster, and like I said, he's not proven much outside of that run in March of 2022. He's got to do it again. He's got to do it more consistently to be for everyone to believe he can be the guy.
Yeah, that run in March of 22 really felt like an anomaly to me. And, I know Tar Heel fans are sitting there waiting for something to break. And I don't know that their patience is going to be long enough to allow Herbert Davis to be the guy if he doesn't deliver this year. I mean, he's had the personnel. I mean, I don't think there's any question. He's had the personnel. I don't know what's not clicking. But the point is, and it could be the players, it could very well, sometimes players, they don't mesh, but that's the job of the coach to make some of that happen or bring it together in some fashion or find that way to make it happen. So if it doesn't happen this year, I think you really put yourself in a bad position. And I would say, I hate to start the season out this way. I'd say that Herbert Davis is on a bit of a warm seat going into the season. So
Well, warm would be the way to put it. It's not hot, but
no.
it's probably like in the middle right now. So warm would probably be the best way to put it.
Yeah. Hey, the women's basketball top 25 preseason poll is coming out on Tuesday, the 17th of October. That's from USA Today. And of course, we'll have that later in the week. And as a reminder for you, on October the 20th, which is a Friday, we'll have an unusual, a special episode of ACC Nation. Debbie Antonelli, former NC State player, and who is with on CBS and ESPN and WNBA, wide list of sports coverage that Debbie is involved in. She's going to be joining us to talk about women's basketball and the upcoming NCAA season. And then next after that, actually, it's not the immediate program after that, but the next week after that, we've got Dan Bonner, who does play-by-play and color analysis for a variety of networks as well, the NCAA specifically. He will be joining us on Wednesday, October 25th, to talk about the NCAA season, which is coming up. So those are two programs I think that you want to certainly catch, because we're going to be, obviously highlighting not only the ACC, but we'll talk a little bit about the NCAA overall and who, number one, Debbie thinks is the team to watch in the NCAA overall and the ACC, and of course, who Dan thinks on the men's side, who's the top teams that we've, some of them that we've just run down, but we'll also get his thoughts on what the ACC looks like overall and get into detail because the season is almost upon us. We're a couple weeks out from the start of NCAA men's and women's basketball, but we want to get ahead of the game here and start getting you some interesting coverage of what's going on. So let's get into sports here. Sports news first. Women's soccer, the first round of the championship action is coming up on October 29th. Men's soccer, the first round is November 1st. The ACC cross-country championship is October 27th. And the ACC field hockey championship action is October 31st, November 1st, and 3rd. So that's all coming up before we start to transition into cooler weather. Will and I were talking about some snow earlier, and so it's coming. So we'll get some of that and colder weather down the road, and getting into some of the winter sports like wrestling and swimming and diving and a whole lot of other things. Basketball, especially some of the stuff that we're going to be talking about. Let's get into football, Will. And a lot of games, some upset action going on here. In my mind, I thought there were at least two games that were clearly upsets. We'll get into those in just a minute, but the first game was Florida State. Had no problem. They manhandled Syracuse 41-3. Thoughts on that game?
Yeah, you said it. It was pretty. I mean, it was pretty impressive how quickly they controlled that game. And I think a lot of this has to do with it's something that Dino Babers has said recently. If you go back, they're down multiple receivers. They just don't have the depth. And Babers had said, all the depth is in the portal because if you're not a consistent contributor, you're going somewhere where you can. And at a place like Syracuse, where you you do struggle between just your stature, and I don't know what the NIL situation is like at Syracuse, but you gotta work really hard to keep the talent there, and he's just been struggling at it. And yeah, it's not necessarily all his fault. Like I said, injuries have been a big issue. I see Rondé Gadsden missing most of the season with an another receiver, Pena, who I believe has not even played yet this year. So they're just banged up, and I think it's just finally catching up to them. Obviously, Garrett Schrader struggled in this game. They went to Carlos Del Rio Wilson. Just really couldn't get anything going. Although LaQuinn Allen ran the ball well, I think that's more. He is a good back, but I also think that is sort of a bugaboo with the Florida State defense is run defense isn't that great. I mean, Jordan Travis, did what he did, 284 and a touchdown. He looked pretty good. It was pretty much a TCB type of win for the Noles, and they got a much bigger game on deck, assuming the health of Riley Leonard is there, because Duke is, if he's healthy and able to play, that should be a fun game.
Very. Next game up was Virginia Tech. This is an upset in my eyes. Virginia Tech rolling to a 30-13 win over Wake Forest. I'm not sure what's going on with Wake Forest. And coming up after we do all of these games, I'm going to ask Will who he thinks team-wise met or exceeded expectations, and those teams that did not. And even though we're only halfway through the season, I think that we certainly can, lend some depth to this conversation in regard to why they're there and why they're not there. So Virginia Tech pulling out I think a huge win, to be honest with you, considering what I expected Wake Forest to be. 30-13 final.
It's kind of funny how an injury to your starting quarterback can really change the trajectory of your season. We're talking about Grant Wells here. He got hurt, and Kyron Jones has been a far more effective quarterback than Wells has ever been. In this game, he threw for 321, 2 touchdowns. Ran the ball all right. I thought some of that sag adjusted, but this Hokies team has way more life to it than it did at the beginning of the season, and he has a lot to do with it. Now, he's not going to earn any all ACC accolades because there are much better quarterbacks in the conference than he is, but what he's done to bring up that floor for Virginia Tech, I think it definitely deserves a shout out. And sitting at 3-4, they definitely have, with the remaining schedule, a chance to get to the bowl. They just can't really slip up. Now, Wake Forest, I think we can get more into this in a little bit, but their issues are pretty much all centered all around the offensive line. Like I said, I'll get more into it in a little bit, but they just can't get anything going because of it.
Next up, another upset, Pitt with a 38-21 win over Louisville. Now, honestly, I would have never seen that coming. And, people can talk all they want about, the weather, and it was pretty extreme. It looked like somebody was dumping buckets on that field. But that doesn't explain what happened in this game. It was almost like Pitt has been sleeping for the front half of the season, and suddenly they woke up.
It's so weird. You look at the score and you see Pitt wins 38-21, but you look at like the team stats and whatever, it really tells a whole different story. Louisville outgained them 430-288 had 28 first downs to Pitt's 13. It's just weird. But the thing is, they turned the ball over 3 times. You cannot win when you lose the turnover margin by 3. It just can't be done. Most instances can't be done. And it's not like it was Christian Veilleux started. Yeah, it was talked, going into the bye that he would be the guy. He was 12 of 26 passing. It's not like he was great. He threw a couple touchdowns, but when you're complete less than 50% of your passes, it really does say you didn't have the greatest game. It helps, like I said, that they turned Louisville over 3 times. Jack Plummer threw a couple of picks. Uh, I think it was one of those games where I feel like Louisville just it was you they were you could even argue that it was kind of a letdown spot because of the Notre Dame win, because that was a very momentous win for the program. And going to a place, Pitt, even though they're not what they've been the last few years, it's still a tough place to play,
Sure.
and it proved it there.
Yep. Yeah, that was a wake up call. And, you know, like you said, when you look at the stats, when you look at the paper, it's like, well, Louisville should have won that game, but they didn't. And, it comes down to, well, stats don't mean squat when it comes down to the final score. Unfortunately, sometimes that's an indicator that somebody is being more effective with the ball. So UNC with a really, I thought, a decent battle with Miami. I didn't expect Miami to win that game, but it was entertaining. 41-31, Tar Heels come out on top. I'm not really sure what to say about this game, to be honest with you.
The only thing you say is North Carolina 6-0 bowl eligible. This was probably offensively one of the most complete performances of the season. Yeah, Drake May completed just over 50% of his passes, but he threw 4 touchdown passes. You get Amari and Hampton going for 197, averaging over 8 yards per carry. You got Tez Walker, 6 for 132 and 3 touchdowns. Just a complete all around offensive effort from North Carolina. They have the Miami's got a good secondary. At least they have 2 of the best safeties in the league. And we talked about that preseason with Manny Navarro, that they were among the best, and they had a hard time in this game. Van Dyke threw a couple picks, even though he threw for 391 yards, but he came out of the game injured. I saw a report today that he had a brace or something on his leg. He's banged up, but it didn't seem like it was going to be much of an issue. They made it sound like he was going to play. The irony of this is that second interception Van Dyke threw was at the end of the game, and Carolina player ran a few yards and took a knee. So that game ended on a knee. Isn't it ironic?
We'll just move on to the next game. Duke with a 24-3 win over NC State. NC State just could not get anything going. And let's just be frank here. It's very easy to dismiss Duke and to think it, because of the history, you tend to think, oh, it's Duke football, it can't be any good. Well, it is hard to break out of that sort of mindset when that's the way it's been for years. But the reality is, the last 2 seasons under Mike Elko, this team has just gone off the charts and continues to grow and to become better almost seemingly every game. I still think they had a really good shot at beating Notre Dame, and that was a great game. The winner is the winner, period. You can't argue that. But this game definitely shows that Duke is somebody to contend with, and NC State just could not find anything to shut down the Blue Devils.
Yeah, we know Duke, when fully healthy, is a top 15 team right now. Yeah, they were level with Notre Dame. I would say they were level with them. in that game, even though Notre Dame won. That was about even a game as you could get, and it just took some work by Notre Dame to win in the end to win. This is I think it says a lot about, well, it says a lot about both teams, to be honest with you, that when you start, the quarterback and he completes 4 passes out of 12, and 2 of them went for touchdowns. But you had a running game that averaged as a total over 6.5 yards per carry. I mean, Jordan Waters, yeah, he had an 83-yard run, so that kind of skews it, but still, you can break open. And this is a good NC State defense. And we even talked about that with Evan last week. This is a good defense. And they had another bad outing in this game, I would say. When you give up close to 200 yards on the ground, I think we can say that the offensive issues are more than just Brennan Armstrong, because MJ Morris not getting a whole lot done either. 193 yards passing. They ran for 3.7 yards per carry in this game, and it's just not working right now. And they're like, and as we talked about with Evan, there's going to be some soul searching that needs to be done. There's a lot wrong with this NC State team, even though, yeah, they're 4-3, probably going to still make a bowl, but we talked about there feels like this program's capable of more.
Yeah, they are. And it's frustrating as a fan and a non-fan. I don't want to say non-fan, because I'm a fan of ACC sports, so that makes me a fan, period. But I don't commit to one school within the conference. And for me, again, it's like I told Evan, and I will repeat over and over and over again, I like to see all of the schools do well and to be competitive. And the more competitive they are, the better the conference is overall, and the more exciting and interesting all of the sports becomes. It's a win-win situation. So I look at NC State, just like you said, Will, it's like this team ought to be performing better. Don't know what the issue is, but damn it, fix it. It's it's ridiculous. And I'll tell you what, if you're listening to this now, maybe you should go back and listen to that conversation we had with Evan from Red and White Podcast, because I think Evan exposed some things, and we talked about some things in general in regard to coaching, et cetera, that we think probably is the root of all evil, so to speak. And, make your mind up from there. If you're a fan, especially, I think it's a good thing to step back for a little bit, get out of the eye of the tornado, or out of the tornado, and look at it, with some perspective, and then make a decision. What do you think ought to be done? And maybe people have already gotten to that point. I think Evan indicated that a lot of his followers are already at that point. So, anyway.
Yeah, hey, there's a certain segment that probably feels like he's probably maxed out what he can do there, and I can understand that. I don't know what his contract situation's like. I don't remember if he said, but I don't know if they can, how much more they can put up. Like I said, we've seen this program do more, and it's capable of more, but it just feels like it's stagnant right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you can tell when the air starts getting let out of a balloon, I'm looking at a team that just strikes me as being a helium balloon that's been around a little bit too long, and it's starting to sag. Coming up in this weekend, we've got Boston College taking on Georgia Tech. Pitt is visiting Wake Forest. UVA and UNC, which is a long-time rivalry, is always a fun game. As they say, the wine and cheese crowd gets together. Duke takes on Florida State at Florida State. Clemson is at Miami. A lot of good matchups in here, Will. Any or more than one that you would like to kind of take a look at and talk about?
I'll just be real quick on a couple of them. You talked about Virginia UNC. That definitely needed to be relegated to CW, because, that one should be over quick. I think BC Georgia Tech could be kind of one of those winner has the inside shot at a bowl. I think Yeah, both of them definitely have a shot still. Maybe they both will get there, but this to me is like a pretty even matchup,
Mhm.
and whoever wins, like I said, could get to a bowl here at this game at down in Atlanta. And we've seen Georgia Tech, play pretty well despite some of the defensive issues. So maybe, they can pull it out in this one. Pitt Wake, not much to talk about there. A little surprise Wake is a favorite here. Maybe, I don't know. I feel like maybe Pitt has some momentum coming off last week. We'll see. Duke FSU could be something depending on the status of Riley Leonard. I'm wondering if FSU being a 2 touchdown favorite is an indication that they're not expecting him to play. I don't know. I definitely would not be a line I would touch right now. And Clemson, Miami had more intrigue at one point, but Clemson's lost a couple games. Miami's lost a couple in a row. Just feels like this is the. I mean, this game's at Miami, and Clemson's a slight favorite. So I'm wondering where to one. I don't know. Like, there's a lot. This game is a lot more even than I expected it to be because Miami's, the offense has been better, but we've also seen what's happened the last couple of weeks. They've kind of faltered a little bit. Clemson is maybe they're starting to figure something out, but I'm not fully convinced of it either. So that game, like I said, that game feels pretty even to me too.
Yeah, I agree. Games that I really want to watch are the last two, the Duke and Florida State, and Clemson and Miami. Um, Interested in the other three for a variety of reasons, but I think the two most competitive are those games. And the Clemson Miami game, that is what's a kind of a toss up in my head. Um, Duke and Florida State. One of the things you pointed out there is that if Duke is effective at running the ball and Florida State has a weakness there,
Yeah,
that could be interesting.
that's kind of the key matchup for, I guess you could say, is Duke's running ability, whether it be the running back or the quarterback, against FSU's run defense, and that's Duke's key to victory is having a lot of success there.
ACC standings, who's on top? It's FSU, and this is ACC so far. They're 4-0. They've got 6-0 overall. They've got a bowl lock already. UNC is 3-0 in the conference. They're 6-0 overall. They've got a bowl lock. Duke is 2-0. They're 5-1 overall. One more game that will do the trick for them. Louisville is next at 3-1. They're 6-1. They have a bowl lock. Tied at fifth. I think you'll enjoy this. Georgia Tech and Virginia Tech at 2-1 in the conference. Georgia Tech with a 3-3 overall record and 3-4 for the Hokies. And the teams that are close to a bowl lock that I can see actually happening fairly soon, a couple weeks. Clemson, they're at 4-2, NC State at 4-3, Miami 4-2, Syracuse at 4-3. Out of those four teams, I really have some hesitancy to say NC State will make it. I'm just concerned with the way they're not playing. But they're close, another two games, they could lock it down. So,
Yeah, and you look at what they have coming up. I mean, Clemson and Miami back-to-back weeks. Those are going to be tough.
yeah,
At Wake and at Virginia Tech. Wake, I think, they would be favored. Virginia Tech certainly is no pushover. And then Carolina at home to
yeah,
close it out.
it's tough.
They might get in by the skin of their teeth.
Just. Okay. Meets or exceeds expectations. What teams in the ACC so far?
Let's see. At least exceed the ones that exceed it. Let's just get those out of the way. Georgia Tech, I think at 3-3 has done a really good job of, I would say, exceeding expectations. And I think if you look at it, okay, they hung with Louisville. They despite the score, they hung with Ole Miss. That was a one-score game in the fourth quarter, but kind of fell off late. Yeah, they lost to Bowling Green, but beat Miami. Say what you want about how that game ended, but it still counts as a win. Um, I didn't think they'd be at 3 wins right now. I think they'd be at 2 wins, and you know, maybe getting, and the way they got there certainly would be weird, but they finished the season with BC, North Carolina, at Virginia, at Clemson, Syracuse, and Georgia. So I know they can get 3 wins. I mean, they could beat BC, they could win at Virginia, they could beat Syracuse. I don't know if they can get the rest, but if they can get the 6-6 in the first full year under Brian Key, I think that would be a pretty successful season.
Yeah.
I think to an extent Virginia Tech, but that was it was kind of weird for me to say they kind of are succeeding just because of the injury to Wells. The backup is, we joke about the backup being better than the starter, and it's kind of true in this case. It turns out Kyron Jones is really very effective for this team. And you look at what they have to do to finish up. What Syracuse was winnable at Louisville, they're probably not. They'll be an underdog at BC, definitely winnable. NC State, like I said, more winnable than we thought. And in the Commonwealth Cup, against Virginia and Charlottesville, they'll probably be the favorite there too.
Yeah.
I think yeah, I was definitely a little pessimistic on them, but coming into the season, but I think they're definitely have a shot at the bowl, and I think that would be a pretty successful season as well.
I've got 4 teams in meets or exceeds expectations so far this season: Duke, Louisville, Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech. So we're kind of thinking along the same lines.
Yeah.
Now, teams that did not meet expectations.
I think the number one, and I'm just going to start with the most disappointing in a way, is Wake Forest, going from the expectations of the team, contending for another bowl. They're sitting at 3-3 overall, but what the concern is with me is just the offensive line has been atrocious. Through 6 games, they've allowed 29 sacks, which is close to 5 sacks a game. So we're looking at a pace for near 60 sacks on the season. That's not good, folks. And when you look at on the other end of the spectrum, they played, as they say, with 6 games, allowed 25 sacks. Duke's played 6 games and has allowed 5 sacks. It just tells you like how weird how different the pendulum is here. They just don't have a very good offensive line. The running game is not nearly as effective as it's been in the past. They're just not getting it done on the ground. I feel like they should be doing a lot better. Pitt obviously is not meeting expectations. Little surprised with how they got there. I mean, it's not like Virginia. You look at it, Cincinnati's not great. I figured, and that game was at home. I thought they would be much more competitive. The West Virginia loss doesn't look nearly as disappointing, because West Virginia has actually been pretty decent this season. Losing to Carolina, nothing to worry about there. Carolina is really good. Getting blown out by Virginia Tech, I thought was a real surprise. But then turning around and beating Louisville was kind of a head scratcher too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you figured Phil Dracovic would have more to do with it. And he's just been, he obviously got demoted. And I think on the most recent depth chart that got released, he's the 3rd string. So shows you his fall from grace. Obviously, Clemson has been a little bit of a disappointment. I thought they would be a team that could be undefeated at this point, but they looked, obviously losing to Duke in a game. I mean, it doesn't the score 28-7. Remember, they kind of blew it themselves because they could not finish. And turned it over more, several times. And then the close loss to the Florida State, I think, says a lot. I think you could, they had a chance to win that game too. They just I feel like a lot of it is just their receivers aren't great. Something they could have addressed in the portal, and obviously Dab refuses to use the portal, and that's why they're down right now. I don't think they're ranked.
No.
I didn't think so, which a little bit surprising, but maybe I don't think they might have been receiving votes, but I think they have a shot if they can beat Miami. Those ones really, really, really stand out to me.
Those are my three: Wake Forest, Pitt, and Clemson. Mm-hmm. And for all the reasons you just listed. You speak of the top 25, the coaches poll and AP both have in their top 5 Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, FSU, and Washington. At number 10, both of them have North Carolina. Then in the coaches poll at 17, it's Duke. At 15, the AP has Notre Dame. And then on the coaches side, 18 is Notre Dame. And at 16, it's Duke on the AP side. And Louisville comes in at 21 in both polls. And in the receiving votes category, pretty much the same thing here, close. At number 27, Clemson in both polls. Miami's at 34 in the coaches poll, 37 in the AP poll. And just a reminder for you that the first CFP rankings will be coming out. The CFP Selection Committee will be releasing that on Tuesday, October 31st. Some trick or treat for you there, my friend. It'll be on TV from 7 until 8 Eastern time if you have access to that, so you can watch while you're doling out the candy to the kids who are coming up to the door and the errant teenagers who may be out there. That would have been me at one point.
So, come on, you still do that. What are you talking about?
If I can get away with it, yes, but anymore. I almost had my friend Zed the Zombie join us for the program, but I forgot to pull him out of the garage. It's and he'll be terrorizing the neighborhood before long. All right. Wow, that's a look at all the sports, man, that's going on in the ACC. There's a lot of stuff going on. We're starting to make that transition again from football into basketball. Doesn't mean that we're dropping one for the other. It just means that we're going from fall sports into winter sports. And there's a lot of stuff, kind of that crossover, that's pretty exciting. A lot of championships, as we mentioned earlier in the program, that are coming up toward the end of October and the 1st of November. So you want to keep an eye out for that. A lot of those championships will be carried on the ACC network or ACC digital network, or Extra as it's called. So if you want to watch those, you should catch them there. Certainly I will be watching. I always like to watch the cross country championship. That's out of Florida State is hosting that this year. That's always a lot of fun to watch on Saturday mornings. People get up early and start running. It's a lot of fun.
I'd like to be able to see the highlights on Twitter or whatever. For some reason, they blocked me.
Okay. Well, hey, what can I tell you? All right. That's a look at football, basketball, and a lot more. And again, a reminder that on the 20th of October, we've got Debbie Antonelli joining us. And on the 25th of October, Dan Bonner is joining us. We'll be talking men's and women's basketball because it's just about here. Anyway, that's a look at what's going on across the ACC. I'm Jim Quist, and this is ACC Nation. Until next time, cheers.
Ooh.